This is TWiT.
And this one will probably be the most controversial of the three I have here, which is that
is this an editorial?
Yep, editorial. I think Intel's toast. I think it's over.
I think it's going to be
the reason and what triggered. I've been kind of leaning in this direction, for a while. I'm not exactly Nostradamus here. I mean, you can see what's going wrong with this company, but the thing that did it for me was we taught when that Monday occurred, a week ago Monday, where we woke up and they're like, "Hey, Pat Gelsinger is retiring." It's like, "Oh, really? Fascinating." And then you find out, sure enough,
the board gave them an option:
leave or we'll fire you,
or you'll be leaving.
So you think, okay, something's happened. Some partner walked away, some milestone wasn't hit, some promise was unmet, some whatever it was, something happened. And they got an offer from Qualcomm they can't refuse, or something happened. So obviously the next thing we're going to learn is that the strategy is changing. That's what's going to happen. The strategy is exactly the same. The people who are co-running the company now, the two co-CEOs, these two non-engineer idiots, are like, "Oh no, we're not changing the strategy at all." Okay, so what? You gave this guy 3.5 years to implement this incredible turnaround, and you're not. What? Why did you fire him? What was the problem? He was the guy that lobbied the U.S. government to get something called the CHIPS Act to happen. He didn't lobby them to get the money. He did. But first he said, "You know what you guys should do? You should give us money." And it worked. Yeah. That's what he did. And you got rid of that guy? Really?
No, I mean, when you're going to restructure a company, you need a restructuring CEO, not an engineer CEO.
But that's why I believe Intel's dead. Because now that you're talking restructuring, there's the minor stuff. There's these little other businesses like Mobileye Security and whatever else that Intel has that, get rid
which
of
they've
that.
been shuffling a bunch of them off anyway.
Yep, which is part of this, because I think like Pat Gelsinger's been working toward this. Remember, Pat Gelsinger was the guy who started reporting Foundry revenues as if it were a separate company.
Yeah.
I don't think there was a clearer sign ever that this was the future.
Yeah.
Right?
I just don't know that he had the political clout to actually do it, so he was dancing around it, right? That's the difference.
Okay, well,
I also think you were just listing off all the possible ingredients. Qualcomm did suggest they were interested in bits of it.
That's
AMD has made suggestions. Like, all the pieces are there.
Yep.
Now where the problem might be the board. It might really be.
Oh, without doubt.
I think Intel might literally have the worst board in the history of big tech.
Companies in general tend to have crony boards, right? Boards of friends. Yeah.
But these are
crony boards.
But Intel's board is made up now largely of non-engineers. They're just like the guy who was the CEO of Intel before Pat Gelsinger, whose name escapes me because who cares? He didn't do a single freaking thing, was not an engineer.
Yeah.
He was the CFO of like 3 or 4 different companies before he came to Intel.
Right.
And he didn't do a single freaking thing in 2 years.
I think it's part of the challenge there is, do you know how to work the politics to get this done? What is the tool you have in your pocket? Do you know how to raise money? Do you know how to close the deals?
Right.
Can you get through the regulatory requirements you're going to have? DOD is going to have an opinion. FTC is going to be all over this. This is not a small thing to pull off. I think dismantling of a giant.
Yeah, so I'm agreeing with everything you're saying. I just want to be clear. I'm not disagreeing about any of it. But this is part of what leads me to this inevitable kind of conclusion. Intel, as we know it, is over.
Is over. But it had been for a while. I would also say this.
Yes.
Gelsinger was probably retired because they went off the Dow. That's a statement, right?
Yeah.
When they came off the Dow, he was done. It doesn't matter what he was doing.
You don't have to be an engineer to be unhappy about that. That's why the board.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, look, the board they're responsible to shareholders. I mean, their purview, their point of being is completely different, maybe from that of the engineer CEO.
You got a couple of calls from a couple of those larger pension funds saying, WTF, dude, do you know how much stock I have to shift now?
Of course.
Because fund's rules mean only Dow companies?
That's fine. I'm just saying, but the point here is that Intel, as this force that was 50% of the personal computing industry called Wintel,
I
think it's over. I think that's over. And when you look at this inevitable shift where these things drift apart, you've got a a foundry business that cannot keep up to TSMC to save its life. And you've got a company that is still the biggest, but floundering master of the smallest pond in personal computing, has done nothing right for the past several years, technically. Mm-hmm. And I think, and now, at the worst possible time, two things have happened. AMD, which should have taken this over, has restructured itself to focus on cloud computing and AI and not on PCs. Mm-hmm. And Qualcomm happened with Snapdragon X. Like I said, aliens handed down this technology. Yeah. And so now we have this out as an industry, this thing that is actually technically better.
Now, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised at all if an entity takes over the licensing for the x86 and they actually run it through some other fabs and make some really phenomenally good versions of it.
Yeah, I will say the little asterisk here is AMD has done such a phenomenal job with Zen 5. Mm-hmm. And it's weird because they're just not emphasizing this too much. Their graphics business is like next to nothing. You know, they're really making this AI push now. But that stuff.
That's also their board hammering them to keep the stock price up. We don't want to get delisted either, right? Like they're all got their fights here. This political.
Yeah, it's too bad because Zen 5 is very good. It is very good. It's not, it's not Qualcomm quality, but as far as just, you need that compatibility, whatever, you're okay with, 2/3 of the battery life or whatever. General performance across the board is unbelievable.
5 years from now, will x86 be gone?
No.
So it never goes away, but then businesses will keep it there, just those code bases. But the point is it influential? Is it evolving to some point that is interesting and exciting?
But it hasn't been for ages, right?
No, I know that. I know, but you're right. But it has been kept in the market by inertia. Yes. If you look at like 250 million,
and it's going to stay in the market of inertia for longer too.
See, all
you're seeing here is that the vertical integration model is over for Intel.
I'm arguing that is what's going to change. Like that Intel has maintained this incredible control over the industry through paying companies off. Mm-hmm. Right? There was a 3-year period where Dell was profitable only because Intel paid them.
Right.
Which is their model. And and they can't do that anymore.
No, they don't have the money.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I mean. Like Intel and then x86. Like, yeah.
You're talking about the bankruptcy model, the very slowly, then all at once, and maybe this is the all at once.
This is my point. Yeah, I think I think x86 goes with it. I think we collectively, of an industry, just like Dave Cutler looked at x64 and said, "Yep, this is the way forward for 64 bits." At that time, 25 years ago, whatever it was.
Mm-hmm. Windows on Windows was the paper. Right.
Yeah. And this is, look, Apple, this is a sad reality of our existence. Apple has shown us the way so many times, and we hate them. We resent them. We're jealous of them. And they did it with ARM, and they did it on the PC with the Mac. And can we just wake up and get the message for once? Like, this is the way forward. Yeah. They showed us how to do it.
Well, and it's not like they had a grand vision. They were just trying to make money, and they knew the phone was the win for them.
I mean when they did the Mac. In other words, by the time they got to the Mac, they were like, "Oh my God,
which Mac?"
Across the board, the M1 Mac, Apple Silicon Mac.
Yeah, so the fully integrated SoC is without a doubt Cook's opus, right? Like the thing that Tim Cook did, that was not something that I think was even on the radar of
You'll never
Jobs.
have. I know Tim Cook is interesting because Jobs, obviously Jobs. I mean, it's like iPhone, iPod.
Yeah, but he was always.
But Apple Watch and health and this thing, this is a non-engineer. This is sort of an engineer, I guess, technically. Was he? Sort of an engineer?
No, he's not an engineer. He's a supply chain guy. But you could argue that he single-handedly kept the PC, the desktop computing alive.
Relevant.
I know, at a point where he had the key to killing it. Yeah. Right. That blows my mind.
They even were talking about a post-PC era.
In 2011, Steve Jobs, or actually... Yeah, no, Steve Jobs.
Cook went to TSMC in 2011.
Yeah.
And the TSMC chairman, just his autobiography just came out. And Cook said to him, "When can you make me a desktop chip?"
Right.
And what do you need to make it? They funded EUV, they funded all that stuff. Right. And it's an amazing
when your biggest customer shows up and says, "I need something," you're like, "Yeah, all right. Well, what can we do?" Yeah, Microsoft doesn't have, or Intel certainly doesn't have that capability. So yeah, look,
Intel always thought it was best to have it in house, but that's because they started all of this.
Of course, they're stuck
it was just innovator's dilemma. That's all.
This is
the
Nokia
usual.
was the same kind of company. It's like our manufacturing facilities all over the world are our biggest strength, or your biggest anchor.
Well,
right? Your $7.5 billion anchor.
Yeah, they're a strength until they sink you.
Yeah, both are entirely true.
So we're talking in the Discord. You probably see it.
No.
System 76, which is a Linux desktop integrator, has a beautiful desktop. Jeff Geerling's reviewing it right now. The Thelio, they've been making it for a few years. They make it in the U.S. They control all the hardware. They also make their version of Linux for it.
Okay.
A version of Ubuntu. I think probably at this point, but they're saying, would you buy this? There are very few x86 PCs that I would consider at this point.
Yeah.
Well, it depends on what you do. So look, nothing is absolute. Like I mentioned, like one of the cool
unless
things.
You're a gamer. If you're a gamer.
That's an example. Like if you're going to play games on a PC, which is, a shift I've made myself over the past year and a half, whatever. Snapdragon's not going to do it, but that's the thing. Like we're acting like all of us have one thing that we use for everything. And I think a lot of these people that are playing games on computers probably have a couple
it's
of computers.
Their gaming PC. Yeah.
Yeah. If you're
I have to say, Apple's coming for you too, by the way. More and more, they still are way behind on AAA games, but
oh yeah, definitely.
That's definitely in their roadmap.
And I'm
playing Valheim, which I bought a Linux machine to play back into COVID. I'm playing it on a Mac now, native.
Tim Cook, money guy, he's clearly done this calculation.
Yeah.
We could make the iPad replace a laptop. We could.
But we're not going to
do that.
Yeah.
But we don't. And
we don't need
for
to.
fans of that platform, it's like, what are you doing? Like the stupid mouse support they added at first, and then the half-ass keyboard stuff, and then eventually they get there, and 12 years later you're like, oh, this is the thing you should have done a million years ago, but you're finally getting there. But why don't they take that extra step? It's because they've looked at this and said, well, the Mac is actually a better business in that regard, and the what we would lose by doing this would be greater than what we would gain.
And they don't need to. They can have two platforms.
Well,
there's a touch platform and a non-touch platform.
Yeah, so a hardware-based company sees the world in terms of hardware.
Yeah.
Microsoft made their big bet with Windows 8 that we could do one thing that would do everything. I don't remember the history exactly, but I feel like it didn't work out too great.
Yeah.
And but it doesn't mean it was a bad idea. It might mean the implementation was wrong.
It was about some of the execution elements.
There's all kinds of stuff, yeah. But there are different approaches. But yeah, here we are all these years later, literally 10, 12 years after Windows 8 and 14 years after the iPad. And Apple, they're making money other ways too, but they still approach it like, we're this hardware company. Yeah. We want to, you use this device for this, you use this device for this. And then, people get work done on an iPad, but those people must work at like a play school or something.
I think it's pretty clear that's not a productivity tool.
But it could be, right? That's the thing.
For photography, my iPad Pro is kind of a nice platform, but
yeah.
It's not going to replace my desktop.
No, but even simple things like iPad Pro, the latest version comes out, awesome hardware, a new version of Final Cut Pro. You're rendering video, and then you go to look at an email, and the video stops rendering. You can't run that background task. It's like, guys, come on, throw us a bone.
It can do.
That's crazy.
Yeah. I have to wonder if Intel gets dismantled, the licensing for x86 goes into a separate entity.
Yeah.
They now can go to any fab they want. The chip prices drop in half because they're not being propped up by Intel's pricing and cost of manufacturing. And it becomes an actual really inexpensive way to build a PC.
So I think
that's an interesting.
Yeah. I mean, this doesn't change my whole Intel is dead shtick, but I look, things last. The Z80 went out of production fairly recently. The MOS 6502 didn't last quite that long, but it was in market for forever. We have Raspberry Pis that are running these, I think they're Broadcom low-end kind of ARM chips, whatever. Like, they'll always be something for something. That stuff is there. But I think just for mainstream, I will see. I mean, I can't there are possibilities we can't really foresee, but I just don't see Intel emerging on the other side of this, like anything close to
not the vertical integrated business. No,
yeah.
The brand may hang around, but I think it's not an innovative design. It doesn't need vertical integration. It can be made less expensive.
I think we talked about this last week. GE is a model here.
Yeah, I mentioned Polaroid
GE did not
as like
survive
a license
as the conglomerate.
Yeah,
they
it's a
split
brand
into
license.
3 parts: healthcare and I don't get nuclear plants or something. But they really,
Sure.
the General Electric we knew for a century is gone.
Yep.
It's split into parts, and that's what's going to happen to Intel, right?
I think so. When this event occurred last week, it wasn't clear, but the more time that goes by, little bits, the board will start talking a little bit, or those 2 co-CEOs, and you're like, they don't actually have a plan. Or at least
so they've
not one
announced
they're talking about.
co-CEOs?
Yeah, they both said they literally said, "Oh no, we're not changing the strategy." It's like,
Yes, you are. Yes,
okay,
you
but-
are.
Well, that's because
Are they M&A guys?
No, they were existing board members.
Yeah.
Oh,
okay,
interesting.
so
they're interim. They're interim.
They're interim,
Yeah,
exactly.
they're trying to
doing
hire
a
somebody.
search. But it's
Can you imagine the quality of the people that are going to would ever be interested in
They
this?
were floating a rumor that Johnny Cerrugi, who's chief of hardware at Apple,
Yes, actually, yes.
would be. But you know what? Johnny's going to go, yeah, right. No.
Yeah, they're not looking for an engineer. They're looking for a restructurer.
An M&A guy
Yeah.
or gal. They're looking for Marissa Meyer.
No,
Hey, I think she's available, by the way.
Nice.
Pretty sure she is.
They're going to
but,
need someone who knows how to work with the FTC, who can deal with the DoD concerns, who can piece this company out into places that will keep everybody happy.
Yeah.
Oy,
yeah.
what a job.
Well, that's the big thing. Like, supposedly,
Well, they'll make a lot of money doing it.
They will.
the award from the CHIPS Act, assuming they hit their milestones, is based on Intel staying together.
Right.
Apparently, I think that's nonsense. But I would imagine that allowing the foundry, which to me is the healthy, more potential part of the company, to go off and do its own thing and get that money and help it do that would actually make some sense.
Sure. As long as they can fill the pipeline.
Well, and the
it's-
fabs are still
and it's
valuable.
DUV, right?
They'll always be legacy nodes. You can make, hey, my PC's running an M12.
I was going to say, no, I just mentioned Raspberry Pi. We need someone to make those chips.
Who's
I
gonna
mean,
make
you
Raspberry
guys will
Pi
be
chips?
great for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
But low margin business.
Right.
What was that? It was like the 3 or 4 year period where they couldn't get past 10 nanometer was probably the time. Like, it was like Intel as a company had a stroke and no one saw it. And
I saw it. We talked a lot
everyone
about
saw it.
it.
I'm
Like,
sorry.
this
No,
is-
but I mean, but nothing happened. Like, nothing changed.
No,
like,
but it was
they
obvious.
sat there in stasis for.
Yeah. They were stuck.
Yeah, it's too bad.
And people are putting out 3 nanometer chips and they're at 10.
I know.
They're just
Well,
stuck.
I think they might have 7. No,
I don't know. Do they?
I think
I don't know if they do. Do they?
Well, and it's a relativistic measure anyway.
It is. It's not really anymore.
It's become a kind of a
nanometers.
marketing term.
Yeah.
But yes, they definitely had a tough time doing the tech part of the TikTok.
So,
Yeah,
Leo, you
yeah.
mentioned in the Discord that you were worried about like Linux on ARM.
So the System 76s are Linux desktops. They're beautiful, but they do have in x86. I'm sure they have AMD and Intel. They certainly have AMD, but apparently they have ARM versions. But would you buy a Linux on ARM at this point? I don't know.
Not today, but as long ago as, I don't know, February or maybe March of this past year, Snap or Qualcomm, it was very public about the work that they're doing.
They're working with them. Yes.
Oh yeah, they've been doing this forever since they started this chipset. So they're actually part of that community. They have I don't know what the organization's called, but they're making sure that there are drivers for Linux for all of the hardware components.
Right, and since System 76 is making all the hardware, presumably they're using hardware that is, that can be work with. I mean, I would assume. Should I buy one and just find out?
No.
I'm going to watch Jeff Geerling's YouTube
I wouldn't do
channel
this.
first.
I wouldn't do this now, but but this coming year,
These
I
are
bet
beautiful
this changes.
computers. They're
They really
so
are. They are.
sweet. Yeah.
No, I mean, I mentioned earlier, like, these use cases where, like, obviously x64 makes sense, like gaming. I would say for now, Linux falls into this category, right?
Yeah, sort of, because of the
Just
Steam
for
Deck.
compatibility. Just,
Yeah. I mean, scientists would buy this, right? These are people with hardcore, big jobs they need to get done and like that. I mean, I don't know who they are.
We're not even sure they're people, honestly.
But what are they? If they're not people, they're scientists.
Yep. Well, if they're using Qualcomm hardware, they might be aliens.
Hey, it's me, Leo Laporte. I hope you've enjoyed this little snippet from Windows Weekly. If you want to see more, want to catch the whole show, you can subscribe in your favorite podcast client or visit our website, twit.tv/WW. And of course, there's links right below me.